Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time together, and bless us as we go about learning your word. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Now, because Dale, you're not usually here.
Right.
Yeah. As we review a little bit, please pause to give Dale a chance to answer. All right, we're talking about characters from Genesis, okay? And the first one we looked at was
Adam and Eve.
nope.
God.
Yes, that's right. We looked at the God slash the Lord, okay? And if we take those two together, we know what about God the Lord?
Oh, he's very kind and
Okay, the Lord is very kind and generous.
And then he's very,
Yeah, but very precise.
Yes.
Compassionate on one side and very precise and structured on the other. Okay, so we talked about God. We talked about
the different ways he comes to.
okay, yeah, and those traditions that
Yeah.
we've got, those strands inside of
Abram.
Genesis. Okay, so let's
Abram.
Yeah.
When they couldn't have
yes.
kids.
Okay, Abram couldn't have kids.
Yeah.
What is kind of characteristic of Abram or
Abraham.
How would you describe Abraham, based on what we've talked about?
Well, he got what he wanted,
Okay,
and his wife let him do it.
he got what he wanted, and his wife let him do it.
Yeah.
Boy, that's kind of loaded, you know.
That's the basic thing.
He was wealthy, no children.
Okay, no children,
No children yet.
no children yet. That's right.
But he was told he made a covenant with the
Okay,
Lord.
covenant with God.
Yeah.
So we got Abram, covenant with God.
Yeah, a couple
You know,
Wife was
like
barren.
barren wife. But was barren wife, but must have been a looker.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
because even when she's old, people are
Yeah.
kings. You know,
They want her.
they want her. You know.
What about the thing we talked about with him getting drunk?
That wasn't Abraham.
No, it wasn't.
Who got drunk?
Who got drunk?
Oh, that was Noah.
That was Noah, right?
Oh, okay.
After
And
when he
he was
planned it,
naked.
and
Yeah,
so we
that's what I mean.
got naked.
Got naked.
So we got Abraham. We're going to continue the story
Yeah, I'm sorry.
today. Oh, who was his wife? Sarah.
Sarah.
Okay, Sarah, and Sarah's barren. What did, because we're talking about people, right? Characters in Genesis.
Right.
Sarah and Abram decide to, since God made him the promise and he doesn't want his slave Eleazar to be the
Heir.
how do they try to help God?
She got her maid.
Got her maid named
Weird.
Hagar.
Hagar. Yeah.
was beautiful.
Think of pants.
Pants,
You know, Hagar. And Hagar has a
Son.
son
Oh yeah.
named
Oh, I forget.
I don't remember.
White Whales. White Whale.
Starts with an I?
Starts with an I.
Idiot.
Not
Yeah, it's Moby Dick.
Moby Dick.
Ishmael.
Ishmael.
All right. So.
Does that start with an I?
Yes. All right. So we kind of, and we'll talk more about about Abraham tonight. We do know the name of his son. And his son's name his son with Sarah is going to be named
We were talking.
another I. Isaac. Okay, but we're going to, and Isaac means laughter or happy, you know, because they got the story about Sarah laughing. We're going to see another reason, you know, from another tradition.
I didn't do it.
No,
I didn't know.
I don't even need it. From another tradition, why his name is laughter or happy. Okay, so Abram, we talked about God, we talked about Abram, we talked about who else?
Sarah.
And Sarah, Abraham and Sarah.
Hagar.
Okay, Noah,
Noah.
and we already know that Noah got drunk. right?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
and his-
and, you know,
His son
Noah,
come in.
He was
Yeah.
exposed.
Noah was exposed.
Shem
To whom
come-
did he?
Shem
His
come
sons.
again.
Okay, to his son, but who giggled?
Shem.
Which is a Shem? Well, it was, Shem was one of the stooges.
I know.
You know, so it wasn't one of the stooges. Which of the sons giggled?
The young one?
Well, his name was,
Shem? No.
no,
The Bendigo.
it was Ham.
Ham.
You know, Ham. And could be Canaan. Sometimes Canaan is Ham's son. Sometimes Canaan is Noah's son. But okay, so we got those guys. So we got Noah, but Noah was more important. You wouldn't say Noah is important because he got drunk.
No.
You know, that would, yeah, you know, he built a big boat,
But
right?
they stressed it in the Bible that if it wasn't important, why would they say Noah got knocked naked?
Haven't you ever gotten drunk and naked?
Yes.
Okay. As have we all. You know, as have we all.
Yeah.
You know, so,
You were just asking.
yeah, I was just throwing that out. Yeah. So okay, so we got, but Noah in the boat, righteous man.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we got Noah, we got Abram, we got Sarah, we got Ham, we got eggs, we got Canaan, we got God. Who else?
What about
Abel,
Tamar?
Cain.
Huh?
Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel. What about Cain and Abel?
Well, one.
One's dead.
Killed him.
Yeah, one of them killed the other. Which one was
Which
the
one?
killer?
Cain killed Abel.
Abel got killed.
Abel got killed. Cain
By-
killed Abel.
by his brother.
Okay, by his brother. Am I my brother's keeper?
Yeah.
Yes.
And God said, well, he should have been.
Yeah, you should have been.
Yeah.
Right.
So then they
So-
gave him all.
so-
He had double work to do.
Yeah.
God didn't punish him. No, God didn't punish him this time. He just had to do all the shopping.
Yeah.
All the sheep herding and farming. You know.
Yeah, that's right. But he did. He did punish him. You know, but gave him a spot.
Yeah.
Gave him Mark of Cain.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark of Cain. Okay, so we've got who are we missing? We're
We're
missing.
missing the girl. What's her name? Tamar?
Okay, you are as focused on Tamar as Chris is focused on circumcision. You know, it's both of you are obsessed. We haven't gotten to Tamar yet.
I thought
You know. You know, we haven't gotten to Tamar yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, how do I know
so,
about it then?
Yeah, because I preached on Tamar.
Oh, okay.
And so, and she's coming up
Okay.
later, but she's not there
Not there
yet.
yet.
You know, we're not there
Okay.
yet. So you can chill on Tamar. We'll talk about circumcision later. All right. So,
But you got to give us the thing.
yeah, Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve.
Oh, they were in the
Adam and
beginning.
Eve. Yeah, right at the
We're going back
beginning.
there.
Yeah, Adam and Eve. And what's their story?
Oh,
They,
well.
the first sin ever created by two new people.
Two new people. You get two people together.
Yeah.
They're going to start causing trouble, right?
Now the devil came.
Well, the serpent came. Yeah, the
Okay.
serpent came, and
Why don't
just said to Eve.
Why did serpents talk in those days?
Well,
Same reason they talk today.
It was a lot like John.
It was going to
Wasn't
happen
that-
sooner or
well, but
later.
remember, it's a story. It's a story. It's a story. It's a story. It's a
But
story.
what wasn't that the devil? We always thought that was the devil disguised.
Well, that's what people later will project back on and say, okay, this. But it's the writer isn't. That's not what he's concerned about. He's writing a story to explain what. What's the story of Adam and Eve explaining? What's an attempt to explain? Because remember, we looked at the first chapter of Genesis, and it said God created them, male and female.
Yeah.
He created them,
Yeah.
which means he's creating what? A whole bunch of people, right? A whole mess of folks. You know, which say, okay, that makes sense because they're getting married and stuff.
Yeah.
But the other writer, you know, talking about early humanity, you know, starts with
Just down.
two people,
Yeah.
you know, Adam and Eve, you know, which becomes this story. And what's the story to explain?
Well, they're threatened by the devil.
Well,
But it's
is
not
that
the
the
devil.
main point, that they're
Yeah.
threatened by the
No.
devil?
But they were innocent.
Okay, so what's the point of?
Good and evil.
Okay,
That's a sin.
yeah, okay. What happens in the story of Adam and Eve?
Well, they get punished by God for doing it.
Yeah, but what is it that they do? What is it that they
Modesty.
do?
They've lost-
Obeying God's laws.
Okay,
Yeah.
by doing what? What is the core of what they do?
They disobeyed, they ate the apple.
Okay, and what is the
Punishment.
fruit is from what tree?
An apple
Not
tree.
the knowledge.
No.
The tree is the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So what is the?
They weren't supposed to touch that yet.
Yes, and by doing that, what ends up happening to them?
Well, they get
They get
embarrassed
kicked out of
about
the garden.
No, they
No.
get knowledge.
They get knowledge of what?
Say everything.
Of good and evil, right? But that means that knowledge. I heard that. I didn't want you to think I didn't hear it. But it's, and so did the Nigerians.
That's what we
all right.
were there. You better be.
Yes. So anyway, the knowledge of good and evil. How did that mess these innocent people up? How did they change from this innocence,
well, they
knowledge of good and evil, and all of a sudden they feel things like shame, right?
Yeah, they put clothes on. They're ashamed of themselves.
Yeah,
and everything.
what is it that occurred that changed humanity, or the story, this is the change in humanity. What do humans now have to do that they didn't have to do before?
put clothes
They
on.
have
Make
choice.
decisions.
They have to make decisions. Now they have to make decisions.
Oh.
And the decisions they have to make is this good or is this
Bad.
evil? Is this good or bad? Right. Is this good or is it bad? And now they've everything they face, they have to decide, is this good? Is it bad? Is it good? Is it bad? Before, they didn't have to
Worry about anything.
do that. It's because you've got
It's all right
innocence,
there.
therefore
Yeah.
everything was good.
Well, they had
But
to-
now they have to make the decision, and that becomes the bondage they face that we see all through the Bible. This idea that we are constantly having to make this decision between good and evil. And that's why the recreation is sort of a recreation of Eden, where we go back to that innocence where good is the only possibility.
Utopia.
You know,
But that's not the
that's
idea.
right. It's a utopia, but not a utopia we have to construct.
No.
A utopia that's given to
That's
us.
not the only thing they had to learn to do. They had to learn how to grow their food.
Oh, absolutely.
How to do all that other stuff. That
Part
they
of the
never had to do.
consequences when
Yeah.
and that's the point of the story.
Yeah.
And that's why we got to be real careful. I think not to ground it too solidly in history. If we do, then we got a problem with their sons finding wives, because
Yeah, come on.
that would have to be sisters,
Yeah.
you know, and that gets really
You
gummy.
think they do
Yeah,
that?
it gets really gummy, and that's why it's better to deal with it as a story,
Yeah.
you know, and less
Yeah.
deal with it as a historical fact. And it also becomes good, again, as a story. It becomes not just their story, but it
Our
becomes
story.
our
Our
story.
story.
You know, that this is us. We are constantly choosing between what is right and wrong, what is good and bad. And that becomes bondage because we're never sure. And there's gray, and, you know, is this good or is it right? You know, it's some of both. And,
Our
you
minds,
know,
our minds are left from that sin to an inability to make decisions.
it becomes,
Well,
yes, because decisions are always somewhere in the middle.
and they made a decision and it was wrong. So they're probably afraid of making decisions.
Inevitably, we
They were
make
going to get,
we
they
make
were going to
bad
get the
decisions.
knowledge eventually,
Yeah.
but they
We
just
make bad
jumped at it.
decisions.
But
Okay.
we also do good things.
Oh, absolutely.
You do good things.
Well, but there's always a mix, you know, we got mixtures in there, and all of a sudden it's not clean anymore. It's not clear cut
Okay.
anymore. Okay, so we've talked about all this business, these figures, and we also talked about a building that a group of folks wanted to
Oh.
build, to be up to
To the sun.
up to God. What's that?
Heaven.
Yeah, to reach up to heaven, and that was what was the name of the tower?
Babylon.
Oh, well, close. Babel. Yeah,
Yeah,
Babel.
Babel.
Yeah. It would reach up,
Thank you.
up to God, and that was sort of the ultimate act of
Ignorance.
wrongness.
Yeah.
You know, human beings wrong. Bang. God scatters them. Abram and Abraham is going to be the way by which God reverses what happens at Babel. Okay, so right now we're kind of in the middle, or we're coming, not in the middle, we're coming to the end of the Abraham stories, and we've looked at it 3 weeks.
Yeah. But it was good, though.
Yeah. Now we've got his name was changed from father to father of many, from Abram to Abraham. But he's still the father of how many?
Oh,
How many? He is, he's the
One.
father in the story, just
One.
one, and it's not by the right woman.
No, it's by
because
the-
God said it's going to be through Sarah,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when he makes the promise, that.
right.
Yeah, not the covenant.
No.
When he makes the promise, Sarah laughs as opposed to Abraham laughing.
Yeah.
But Sarah laughs, and so by gum, this is going to happen, and it's going to happen soon.
She stayed with him, though.
Yep, but she is. What's the 2 problems with her having a child?
Her age,
She's old, and she is.
past childbearing.
But she's beautiful.
Well,
She was barren.
she's barren.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's old and she's barren. So that doesn't speak well. Now, in the New Testament, we're going to see somebody that the writer of Luke is going to use this Sarah, but it's not just Sarah. Hannah with Samuel is going to be in the same situation. We're going to see the same situation later in the story in Genesis. Barren woman who is old, beyond childbearing.
But they have the commandments. Why don't they?
They don't have the commandments yet.
Nope.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, this is pre-law.
Yeah,
This is
Charles
pre-law. In fact,
hasn't got-
we've only got one law. We've only got one law that God has given. One law. Well, that's not. Gave Noah that now you could eat
Yeah.
animals
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
So there was a
Oh,
covenant with that. We've got one law that Abraham was given, and that law involved circumcision. Very good, Chris. Give Chris a round of applause.
Whoa.
All right, chapter 21, circumcision. All right,
You shouldn't get upset with that because you're always going to be right.
you are always going to be right. All right.
Yes, you.
So we've got right at the beginning of chapter 21.
Yeah.
What happens?
Well, Lord visited Sarah and
The
said,
promise gets filled.
The promise is fulfilled, and it's the Lord that's doing it. So
Yeah.
we know it's in this kind of tradition strain. So so she ends up conceiving, and she has a son, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Isaac.
And Abraham does what to the son? Circumcises him
Yep.
and names him
Isaac.
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 When he was 8
Okay.
days old.
He was 8 days old. Now again,
Yes.
this is one of these deals where, because this 8-day business,
It's just,
it's, telling the little boy, why, do we circumcise on the 8th day? Well, let me tell you the story of Abraham and Isaac. So Abraham is no kid, right?
No.
no.
Okay, he's a pretty old guy.
Yeah.
And Sarah says what?
Sarah says what?
Yeah, what does Sarah say? Why does she name...
She's made laughter for me, everyone.
Okay, because she's happy, right?
Yeah.
Because God has made her happy, and so I will name him Isaac, right? Well, see, but we've got these different traditions that are blended together. This is another reason
Yeah.
for the name. First reason we heard earlier, because
Yeah.
she laughed when God made the promise. Now she's filled with joy.
So that she can.
Yeah, so gonna name him Isaac.
Yeah.
Okay,
But he was 100 years old.
he was 100 years old.
I don't even know
Man.
if you can find it in here, 100 years old.
Now, we've got the promise then.
I'm so sorry. What's wrong with me? Nigerians, all right?
Oh, I got up to 100.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah. All right, so we've got Isaac born. Now, who's going to be the one to carry the promise? Isaac, right?
Isaac, yeah.
But we've still got who hanging around?
We got Hagar hanging around.
We got Hagar hanging around,
She's not happy.
and Hagar has a little boy named Ishmael.
Oh, I like
And who is Ishmael's daddy? Abraham. And who is Isaac's daddy? Abraham. Okay. And little Ishmael and little Isaac, what do? Because they're kind of growing up
They're
together.
playing together.
They are playing together,
Well,
right?
there's gotta be
Yeah.
a discrepancy in the age here, what, 10, 12 years? Something?
Well, you would think so, but it sure sounds as though they're of comparable age. But again, we're talking about traditions
Yeah.
that are being blended
Okay.
in together. Because, yeah, it would sure sound as though Ishmael is considerably older, given everything that's happened between Hagar and Ishmael and Sarah and Isaac. You know, Abimelech and you know, Sodom and Gomorrah and all this jazz. You know, we would think it'd be longer, but when we pick up in verse 8, it would seem to be two little boys playing together.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, Sarah sees that she is not happy,
No.
right?
No.
Sarah is not
She wants her gone.
happy. She wants
Isaac.
who gone?
Big.
Oh,
She wants Hagar gone,
And-
and she wants
Ishmael gone.
Ishmael gone.
Which one was the one he was going to announce to be?
Well, who was
It was the
Abraham knows who's going to carry the promise, right?
Yeah.
Who is going to carry the promise?
Isaac.
Isaac. Now, understand, this is this for Isaac to carry the promise. We got a slight problem. What's the problem if Isaac carries the promise?
It's not
It's not what God said.
It's not the first son. And remember, well, you say, oh, well, Hagar. No. Hagar bore
The first son.
the first son for Sarah
Yeah.
and Abraham. So even though she was a different woman, Ishmael really belonged to
Sarah.
Abraham and Sarah.
Yes.
It was their son. He should be the one to get the blessing. He should be the one to carry the promise. Now, somebody in the New Testament is going to make a big deal of this. Who in the New Testament is going to say this is really important if we want to understand God? The Apostle Paul.
Yes.
And when Paul is writing, he's going to say, now understand, you know, Isaac carries the promise and not Ishmael. He's going to give another example of a younger son carrying the promise instead of the older son. And his point is, God can do
What he wants
what
to do.
God chooses to do. God is not bound by some kind of law.
Tradition, yeah.
That's right. So Paul's going to see this as really, really important. But we've got Abraham, and he's got two sons. You know, Sarah clearly wants which son to be secure.
The new one.
The new one, her son.
Her son.
You know, she wants her son in this story. She wants her son to be the one that is obvious, knows that he's carrying the promise. Now, when she says, you got to get rid of this slave girl and her son, Abraham feels what?
Distressed.
He feels distressed. Okay? And what happens to Abraham that will lower his level of stress? How does Abraham stress? So Sarah says, you got to do something about Hagar and Ishmael because Isaac and I are the more important. And Abraham is saying, oh man, I've got woman problems.
Yeah. But God spoke to him and told him to go ahead and do
Okay,
it.
God spoke to him
Yeah, but-
and says to him what?
It's okay, I'm gonna make a nation out of them.
Okay, don't stress out,
Stress out, yeah.
you know,
Yeah. That's good.
do what Sarah says,
Yeah, do it.
okay? Isaac is going to be the one to carry the promise, but
You will go on through them.
that's right, Ishmael is still going to take care of Ishmael.
Yeah.
Okay? So what is Abraham's choice right there?
None. Yeah.
Well, he
says to listen to his wife, so.
Yeah, so he's got a choice. He can either, because he feels distress, right?
Yeah.
You know, he can either trust God, that God means it when he says this, or he cannot. And if he doesn't trust God, he can say to Sarah,
Never mind.
shut your pie hole.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna have both boys.
Here.
You know?
Yeah,
So what does Abraham end up doing?
he does what God wants.
He does what God, he trusts God,
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
And he does what any man in that situation, and let's face it, we've all been there, what every man would do. He gives Hagar what?
Bread and water.
Yeah, gives her bread and water,
Sends her-
you know,
Sends her-
bread and a
sends her
skin of
out.
water, and
Yeah.
sends her out to the desert
Yeah.
Yeah.
with her
Kid.
kid, right?
Right.
Okay, and she goes out, right?
Yeah.
And what happens is she's wandering in the wilderness. And whenever you see in the Bible wilderness, you know, we think of wilderness as what?
Force.
Forest, right?
Yeah.
That's not wilderness.
Desert.
It's desert.
Oh, the sand, yeah, yeah.
It is bad. It is desert. It is not trees and stuff.
Death Valley.
It is Death Valley. That's exactly right. So sends her out into the wilderness. Sends her out into the desert. Rocks, you know, big old spiders, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. And what happens to Hagar?
Well, she runs out of bread,
She runs out
of food and water.
of food and water. She runs out of water. And what does she then do when she runs out of water?
She
Puts her kid under a bush.
Puts her kid under a bush
in the shade.
and
In the
in the
In
shade,
the shade, but
Right.
and she goes
walks away.
And why does she do that?
She don't want to see the kid die.
She doesn't want to see their kid die. She doesn't want to see. Now, understand again, Hugh, like you said, we got Ishmael's age kind of being very fluid here, because on one hand he would seem to be older,
Yeah.
you know, given everything that's happened
Well,
since he was born, at least. Then he seemed to be about 6, playing, or maybe younger, playing with Isaac. And now he seems to be, you put him under a bush, he's going to
Die.
stay there.
Or-
You know, it sounds almost like an infant that she's putting under a bush.
Yeah.
So, again, we're talking about these traditions coming together. And evidently the writer feels it's important enough to see that Ishmael can't jump up and run back to his mother. You know, that this is important enough that he's going to keep that idea that he's kind of a baby under this
Yeah.
bush. But she makes this, she's gonna die, and so is he.
Yeah.
The baby's gonna die. And what does she end up doing?
She doesn't die.
Well,
She cries and weeps. And who responds? Now, we're kind of having deja vu all over again with Hagar, right?
yeah.
Because what happened to Hagar before?
God.
When Sarah kicks her out?
Yeah. that was-
Same thing. Goes into the wilderness, you know, runs it, doesn't have any water,
Comes
you
back.
know, angel appears, she goes back, you know, has Ishmael. Now, she and Ishmael, what happens?
God heard the baby cry.
Okay, God hears the voice of the boy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and what does God do?
Sends an angel.
Sends an angel,
Yep.
okay, and what does the angel do?
Talks to her.
Gave him
tells her
water.
it's okay.
Okay, talks to her, opens her eyes, and she sees
Oh, well.
a well.
Yeah, yeah.
Right in the desert. And what does she do? Now, we get a sense she sees a well, he opens her eyes. What's occurred here?
Miracle.
A miracle. Okay, we got a miracle here, right?
We don't question
Sees
it.
we don't question it. Sees a well, okay, which means that the promise God made to Abraham,
Yes.
you know, about Ishmael,
Can be fulfilled.
is going to be fulfilled, right? Okay, see, she fills the skin with water and gives the boy a drink. Okay, so evidently, though, they make it to wherever they're going, or maybe they hang out there. I don't know. Doesn't really say, but it says what?
Said he lived and became an expert with the bow.
Okay, God is with him, right?
Yeah.
And they lived in the wilderness, in the desert, becomes an expert with the bow. Now, we've seen this bow business before. When have we encountered bows?
There was an attack.
There was a
somewhere.
bow.
Yes, a bow in the sky.
Oh, that's right.
You know, which is a
Rainbow.
rainbow, right? That was God's sign that he wouldn't destroy the earth again. You know, so bow was a weapon.
I never knew that.
Yeah, that was part of the covenant, you know.
What happens when there's two?
When there's two,
I'm not drunk when I say that. I was never drunk when I saw them two. I saw them right over the top of the Kroger building one day coming down.
that means you're close to McDonald's.
I know that would, thank
The
you.
golden arches.
Yeah, the golden arches. Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly.
Thank everybody.
That's right. All right. So he becomes an expert with the bow, right?
Yeah.
He marries. Now he married.
Oh, no, I like this part. You missed this part.
Okay.
His mother picked his wife.
His mother got a wife for him.
I got a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, his mother got a wife for him,
Wait, you're black.
and the woman is from
Tibet.
Egypt.
Egypt. It's an Egyptian woman.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know,
like
for
Cleopatra.
yeah,
From
that's
Egypt,
well,
That's right, yeah.
yeah,
Man, he grew quickly.
Not really.
not really.
How can you say that?
Yeah.
That's-
Okay. So anyway, we've got Ishmael taken care of, right?
Yeah.
All right. Who shows up in verse 22? So we got Ishmael's story. He is out of the picture. God is going to fulfill the covenant. Ishmael's going to become a great nation. I've already told you last week. Ishmael is going to be seen as the father of the Edomites. And when you look
that's
at
right.
Jewish history, the Edomites and the Israelites are always going to have tension. You know, sometimes one is going to have control, sometimes the other, but there's going to be tension.
Land, they fight
Yes,
over
they
land.
fight over land. You know,
Yeah.
the Edomites are to the south and slightly to the east of
Oh.
where Israel ends up being. Okay, so we've got Ishmael taken care of. Who shows up again in 22?
I can't say that.
Abimelech.
Abimelech.
Yeah.
Now, we ran into him before. When did we see Abimelech?
I don't remember.
I remember.
Because you're a
you
priest,
would.
a rabbi.
I remember a rabbi or something. Remember that was the guy
He was a
that
commander. of
Abraham lied. You know, he was there and
Told him that Sarah was.
yeah, Sarah was his sister, and Abimelech, you know, was get none of his the
Is he-
population could have babies, and because of the curse God had put on everybody until he figured out that that it was.
Okay.
No, that Sarah was a wife, but he didn't lay a finger on
Yes,
Sarah and all that kind of
he
stuff.
let her go back.
Okay, so we got
He gave
Abimelech,
Abraham all
but
that
this
stuff.
story
Yeah, I remember
has nothing to do with the prior story.
No.
Yeah.
You know, nothing. It's like it's a different guy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we got Abimelech and who?
Like,
Okay, we got Abimelech and he's got an army. Now, if John were here, he would say,
Good luck.
I don't know what he would say.
I don't know.
But these are tribes. So when you talk about the general of the army, you know, we talk about tribal chiefs and,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so leaders.
yeah.
So it's not like commander of, you know, an organized standing army. You know, it's kind of
They just
tribal.
bear arms when they need
Yeah,
to.
that's right. It's
Rocks
kinda
and
tribal.
stuff, whatever they.
Now, what does Abimelech, what does he do with respect to Abraham?
Well, he has a conversation with him about loyalty.
Okay, he has a conversation about loyalty. Now, Abimelech must be fairly settled. If he's king, is settled, more settled, which means he must earn his living doing what?
Kingling.
Well, I mean, his people.
Like a king.
Farming.
Farming, because you know if you're ruling an area, you're farming. Abraham though is
Sheep.
he's constantly moving, and as he's moving his flocks, and there are, according to what it says in Genesis, there are a lot of animals. He's got a lot of animals. You're having to move a lot of it, so he's moving into Abimelech's territory where his folks are doing farming.
And he doesn't want them to bring the sheep in to eat all their.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah, we gotta
Abraham
figure this
has
out.
to,
Yeah, we have to
you
figure
know,
something out.
you got to do something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what do Abimelech, as Abraham moves his little flocks as they're sort of passing through, looking for green pastures, then most of the land isn't under cultivation, only small,
Yeah.
tiny little farms. So it's not like they're eating the crops. But while Abraham is in the land, Abimelech's land, what does Abimelech want? What does he want from Abraham?
Loyal.
Wants loyalty, right? In
Yeah.
other words, while Abraham's there, Abimelech doesn't want him what?
Fighting with him.
Fighting with him.
Well, he wants him to be subversive to them.
Absolutely wants him to be, I'll let you and your flocks be in my land,
But I'm in charge.
but I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And I don't want you causing trouble. I don't want you helping my enemies. In fact, if I need you, I'm making you a temporary citizen. Because I expect you, because remember that story where Abraham does all that fighting with the kings and on the plain. I expect you to support me. I don't want to. And Abraham says what?
Okay, I will.
He wanted them.
I will swear, yeah.
I will swear. Okay. Now, as he swears, so we've got a treaty. We got a covenant. Same kind of covenant we had Abraham made with God, right?
But this is what the,
These are two people, right?
yeah.
Now, the story, and so everything is honky-dory, right?
Yeah.
Until verse 25. And what happens at 25?
No.
There's the well water.
Okay, we got a well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And he
Here
built
we go
it.
fighting about
Okay?
water already, huh?
And what happens with this well?
They named
It's
it.
been seized by
It's been
his
seized,
his people.
Okay, Abimelech's people take the well,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
right? Why is that a problem? Why is that
You need
important?
water
You
for
need
your
water.
sheep.
Okay, this is really important. Both of them need water.
But yeah, everybody.
Water.
Everybody needs water.
Yeah.
Wells were usually considered neutral, weren't they? So that everybody could.
That's exactly right, because it's so incredibly valuable, that you're not going to, you don't seize it, you don't take
Yeah.
control of it, right? So we've got a real problem.
Yeah.
That's almost a life and death kind of problem. And what's the resolution?
Oh, I don't know.
I think they watered less and gave the animals less water.
Well, what's the resolution?
Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech.
Okay,
And the two of them made a covenant.
okay, and the covenant is what?
Okay.
Yeah.
7 lambs and flock.
So what's the deal? What's the covenant? What's going to be the covenant? Because Abraham is giving Abimelech animals. What is Abimelech giving back to Abraham?
The wool.
No, not the
The
wool.
water.
The water. That's the covenant. That Abraham can use the water, and Abraham does until he does what?
Moves on.
Moves on, because he is.
A wanderer.
Nomad.
He's a nomad. He's got flocks.
Yeah.
When his flocks eat the grass in one place, they have to
Move on.
move on. You don't settle.
And there's not that
You know
much
what?
grass in the desert.
Well, it's not a whole lot of grass in the desert.
No.
And you just kind of push. That's why the 23rd Psalm about he leads us to green pastures.
Yes.
That's what he does. God moves us around. Okay, so how is this within these Abraham stories? What's the function of this little one? Because this is sort of like that story about Abraham fighting the kings. Fighting the kings. This is kind of coming out of left field.
Right.
Doesn't seem to fit. What's the purpose? Why would the writer say this story is so important, I've got to, invest valuable space. I've got to take that skin of reeds and write this down because people need to know this story. What's the point? Why? What does this story do for the bigger story?
I think that they.
Lays the groundwork.
Okay, how? Laying the groundwork for what?
Well, he can be trusted, he's righteous.
Okay, he's righteous not only with God,
Yeah.
but with other people.
Other people.
Okay,
And his family.
certainly that's a point. And by the way, I think there are several reasons why this is in there. Abraham is trustworthy. What else we got?
Well, God made a covenant with Abraham, so people have to get along with him.
Okay, so God is behind, even though he's never mentioned. God is behind the scenes
Yes.
in this. So God is still protecting and blessing Abraham. Okay, what else do we have in this story that becomes maybe important later to the bigger story?
Well, it seems that seems what they're, from here, he's moving on, and God wants him to give him an offering, a sacrifice.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, he's moving on. We've got these two gods, the everlasting God, which is again another El God that the writer is putting into the God of Israel. So we've now got another deity that's been sort of included in that. There's a place name, Bathsheba, right?
Yeah.
That's been established. And that's going to be a name we're going to see again and again.
Isn't that where
and again.
Hagar went?
That's going to be because it's in the south. Yes, it's going to be in the south. That's going to become important later. And here again, you got the kid coming to his father. You know, where did Bathsheba? Why do we have Beersheba? And father says, well, let me tell you, this was where your great whatever, your ancestor Abraham, where he made a covenant with a king, because he's at the king's level, and also dug a well.
Yeah.
So this is why this place is important, and that's why it's still important. Okay? Because the story completely shifts again when we go into chapter 22.
Yeah.
And what happens at the beginning of 22? Now, I think this is the most cleanly written story, short story in the whole Abraham account. This is really good. You know, what does the writer tell us right at the beginning?
God's there.
Okay, we've got God being here. Now, that God here is El, right?
Yes.
So we know it's coming from one of those traditions. Okay? Now, we got God, but we even know something else about God. What do we know? What has the writer told us right at the beginning that Abraham may not know?
That he had been being tested.
He is being tested. So we know that and I think that's really important, because when you read the rest of the story, you know, it's easy to say, oh, this is horrible what God is doing. This is a terrible thing. But we, the reader, know, or the hearer, because it's being read out loud, we know right at the beginning that things are not the way they appear. You know, God is doing something more than just, you know, something more is going on than what just would appear on the surface. Okay, so speaks to Abraham, right?
Yes.
All right.
Talk to him.
Here I am, which is really, we're going to hear that several times in this story. The writer's going to go back, okay? Speaks to him, okay? Now, what does God tell Abraham to do?
Give up his
Take your son.
Okay, now he's asking for
Take your
obedience,
son, yeah.
and remember that becomes the sign of, you know, we had faith from the Lord. The Lord wants faith. God wants obedience. From these two traditions that are kind of blended together. So God wants both. But this is really an obedience story. You know, this is an obedience, you know. All right, so we've got, he says, what does he tell Abraham to do? At least his obedience until we get to the end. What does he tell? Take Isaac.
And take him and burn him.
Okay, now I want you
As
to
a burnt
notice
offering.
how precise the writer is.
Yeah.
He says, take Isaac.
Take Isaac.
But he defines Isaac. How does he define Isaac?
Your only son.
Your only son. So he's not talking about Ishmael.
No.
That's right.
One
Who
person
you
you love.
The person you love. Okay, man alive. The writer is really laying it on thick, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah, what he's doing is he's explaining the relationship between the boy and the father, right? In case there's any doubt. Because at different points, Abraham, you know, he didn't have a problem sending Ishmael and Hagar,
No.
his other son, into a desert.
Right.
You know, so the writer is really taking care that we know the relationship between Abraham and Isaac. So this is your only son, which means the only way the promise is going to work itself out. And it's the one that you love. What does he tell him to do?
Take him to the mountain.
To the land of Moriah.
Yeah.
And I want you to do what?
Burn him.
Build a
I
fire.
want you to, well, not just burn him, I
It's an
want you to
offering.
make an offering
To me.
to me,
Of your son.
okay, of one of the mountains that I'm gonna show you,
Okay.
okay? You know, make an offering. So, talking about human sacrifice, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Do, make a human sacrifice to me, okay? And do we have anything, does God tell him anything after that?
No.
In that, the first little exchange? No,
No.
no. Okay?
Yeah.
Abraham has a choice, right? What does Abraham do?
He gets up and he's gonna go take him. Yeah.
He gets a, now again, think about this writer. I mean, this is kind of a dramatic, he shaped, it doesn't say that, it doesn't just say that Abraham, you know, got up and
No.
went.
Yeah.
You know, like when God said, go from, you know, where you were living before, to the promised land, and said, Abram went, but the writer here is being a whole lot more dramatic. He gets up early. He does what? He saddles his donkey. He does what else?
Cuts the wood.
Yeah, takes two people with him. He's got his son. He cut the wood for the offering. He set out for the place, and the place is in the distance, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the third day, Abraham sees it far away. Now, what, so what is Abraham, what does it appear as though Abraham is doing?
Follow
Gonna follow
instructions.
you.
Would appear as though he's following the instructions God has given him. Okay? So what happens?
He tells the two men to stay.
Okay, tells the two men to stay here with the donkey,
Oh, yeah.
and the boy and I are going to go and,
Worship.
okay, we're going to worship and we're going to come back to you, right?
Back, yeah.
All right. So Abraham does what?
Took the wood.
Okay, puts the wood on the back of the boy,
Mhm.
no matches, you know, takes fire with him,
Oh, is that how they did it?
and a knife. And again, you know, this is a good writer. You know, I think he wants us to notice, you know, he's got wood, he's got fire, and he's got a knife. And that's what you need to perform a sacrifice.
You know, I think when he's stepping there, at least in my mind, if he just said, you know, get Isaac, take him up to the mountain, when you get there, I'll have you do something.
Right.
I think he should get a knife in the mind of Abraham. Wow. Do this. Wow. You know, he's building up in Abraham a lot of mental.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, since the writer is writing all of it, he wants everybody who hears this story to have those same mental images.
Yeah.
You know, if he just said he took Isaac and they went to a mountain, you know, to perform a sacrifice. You know, we don't have mental pictures, but we've got
A
these
mental
mental
picture.
pictures.
Yeah.
We got this mental picture. Okay, so they take off. Now, what do, as they're walking together, and the writer even says the two of them are walking together. What does Isaac say?
He realizes.
Well, he says, Father first, and Abraham says, here I am, which is the same thing he said to God.
Yeah.
You know, when God called him. Okay?
Never mind.
Okay, here I am. Okay, what does Isaac say?
Well, he wants to know where the lamb for the offering.
Okay, yeah, we got fire and we got
We
wood,
got the knife.
Altar.
Where's the
but
offering?
where is
The
the
offering.
lamb?
Yeah,
Because we've
right.
got to have a lamb to have a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
And what does Abraham say?
Oh, he just says God will provide it.
God will provide a
When we get
lamb
there. Yeah.
for the offering, my son. Now, what lamb does Abraham believe God has provided for the altar?
His son.
His son.
His son.
His son.
Absolutely.
Okay. His son.
Well,
So there's no doubt.
That
Yeah, no
it's,
doubt.
Because of what happens later, Abraham isn't thinking, oh, there'll be a lamb when I get there. Because God hasn't mentioned anything about that. So it's not like, you got to trust me, then I'll provide something for you. This is an obedience thing. And God has provided a lamb, and the lamb is
Isaac.
you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a dumb question.
No, don't. That's
No question is ever done.
What would have God's plan been for man or woman had Eve not ate the apple?
Well, see, that's why you got to look at it. You look at it as a story, because what they're doing is they're projecting back. This is the human condition. Why are we bound to make choices, and our choices are never perfect? They're never 100% right. There's always something negative. There's no pure, innocent choice anymore. Well, let me explain how that happened. But I'm going to explain it through a story. That becomes more, approaching it that way becomes a little more obvious when you look at what the name Adam means. Because the word Adam means human.
No.
That's what Adam means, human. Because Adam was made from the Adamah, and Adamah means dirt. That in Hebrew, that's dirt. So Adam is the one from the Adamah, and so it means. So if you read that story of Adam and Eve, and substitute human or person instead of Adam, all of a sudden this becomes a story of us. That we are bound. We have this knowledge. We struggle to determine for ourselves what is good and evil. That's the human condition. And they're projecting it just like, like the ancient Greeks with mythology did. How did evil enter the world? Well, let me tell you a story about Pandora's box. And that has nothing to do, the Greeks didn't believe there was a woman named Pandora and she had a box. But that was a story that showed, curiosity brought evil. The fact that human beings are never satisfied, that they're constantly pushing the edges. And the more they push, the more they unleash problems. The more you look, the deeper you look, the greater the problems become.
And solve problems.
And solve problems. That's exactly right. And that's what we've got, I think, with this story of Adam and Eve, is a story that, like a parable, a story that has a meaning.
Yes.
And that sometimes when we choose good and evil, we choose things that are okay. Because Abel sacrificed an animal and God was pleased with his offering. So it's not that we're always doing evil stuff, it's that we're constantly having to choose. And that's what was abandoned, that's what Adam and Eve abandoned in the garden. The garden is a place of innocence, not a place of choice.
But the tree of knowledge was there. So eventually, God was going to let him do something with it or learn from it.
Well,
But it wasn't time yet.
it was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is just what happened. This is a story that might help you understand. The reality is, I don't care about the historicity. I care about, how do I convey it to other people? It's like this. Does that make sense? Okay.
I'm
So
telling my own story.
yeah, it's and I mean, what's really going to be cool? We're going to start looking at stories from the New Testament.
Yeah.
On Sunday, when we start looking at parables, and
Sunday.
this is a good example of maybe an Old Testament parable, a story that has a meaning. And Jesus is going to be teaching a lot of parables. This is a story that has a meaning greater than the story itself. It's something we can apply to a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what we're going to start looking
Well,
at.
let me ask you.
Yeah.
As far back as I can remember, okay, and maybe farther back than I can remember would have been different with me. But as I read this, to understand it, probably in my teens, I said, nah, God's not going to let that happen. No.
You mean the story of Abraham and Isaac?
Right.
Yes.
How many of you had that same feeling, or you thought God was going to have him kill him?
No, I thought that It would.
I did.
I just didn't think that was gonna be the ending.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not
You're
that kind
smarter
of
than I
God.
am.
No, well, I'm not smart
Well-
or anybody, but because when God in the beginning says, I will make a nation your son and so forth. Now,
Mhm.
that's not happened.
Right, right.
So now if God now kills him, allows him to be killed, everything that God has said is gone.
Well, you're right, and I think that test at the beginning helps us really go in the direction you're going.
Yeah.
You know, that the reader,
Leaves
you
me a
know,
little bit.
yeah, and
If
so
you're reading it for the
in
first
this
time, yeah.
in fact, when we look at all these stories, I don't think our perspective is ever to be in the story. We're looking down on the story. Because our perspective, we know motivations,
Yeah.
we know feelings, we know, this is something we know. You wouldn't know that if you were in the story itself.
Yeah.
So we're looking down on it. This one is even stronger because he says at the very beginning, I'm going to tell you what's going on in the mind of God. So you're not walking with you're not one of the two men wondering, you know, what are they doing on that mountain? We're not supposed to be there. We're supposed to be looking down on the story. We know this is part of a testing
Yes.
and testing his obedience. So I think, Hugh, I think you're 100% right. I think the writer wants to make sure that we're not totally sucked in, but he's writing the story vividly
Sucked
enough
in.
that we're supposed to see these images.
Well, not only see those images, but reinforce and strengthen our faith. What
Absolutely.
God's gonna do.
Absolutely. And our willingness to obey.
Yeah.
And our willingness to obey. Okay, so the two are walking together. You know, God going to the place where God has shown him, right?
Yeah.
All right. And gets to the place, and what does Abraham do?
He ties him up.
Well, even before that,
Oh, before they
you know,
He built an altar.
again,
Yeah.
we've got this methodical description, you know, this detailed description.
Yeah.
Because he wants us to do what?
Think.
Visualize
And think.
this story. He wants us to see it. Abraham is building
The,
an altar, okay? Abraham does what?
Arrange the wood.
Arranges the wood on the altar. Abraham does what?
bound his
Bound his
son.
Ties up Isaac. Abraham does what? Lays him on the altar. Where?
Upon
On
the
top of the wood. My gosh, what's about to happen? You're laying him on the wood because eventually you're going to do what?
Kill him.
Light it. You're going to set the wood on fire, right?
Yeah.
And then Abraham does what?
Takes out his knife.
Oh, it's great. Reaches out his hand.
Yeah.
You know, and takes the knife, and we know as the reader, we know what Abraham, as we're looking down on the story, we know what Abraham is about to do. What is Abraham about to do?
Kill his son.
About to kill his son, right?
Yeah.
Why is he about to kill his son?
Because he was told to.
Because he was told to do it.
Yeah, because he said, what about my son? And they said, you just
He was
obey.
told to do
You
it.
have
That's
to
right.
obey.
Told to do it,
Yeah.
right? And so when he's lifting up his hand, the idea, the writer tells us he's doing it just in case. If it says lifted up his hand with his knife, you might read it and say, oh, but he wasn't going to kill it.
Oh, he was.
He wasn't going to kill it.
No.
Abraham was going to do what?
He was going to kill
He was
his
going to drive the knife into his son,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then set the wood on fire and offer a sacrifice to God. But what happens?
An angel.
An angel.
came.
Okay, an angel calls from him, or to him from heaven, right? And says, Abraham, Abraham. And he says again,
Here am I.
here am I. Which is the third time he said that. Once to God, once to his son, now to his angel. And the angel says what to him?
Don't lay your hand on the knife.
Okay, don't lay your hand to him, right?
Yes.
And now we know what?
That you fear God.
Okay, that you fear God and that you wouldn't even withhold your only son from him. Okay? Now, a lot of times people will bring in, well, this is the promise, and, the promise would be jeopardized and all this, and that was in Abraham's mind. I think the writer tells us exactly what was in Abraham's mind right at the beginning. It was his
Order from.
only son,
Yeah.
and it was the son he loved.
Really loved.
And that's all we need to know. We don't need to have anything else, because the writer has told us right at the beginning. All right, Abraham looks up. and sees what?
A ram.
A ram. Now this is really, yeah, a ram is caught with his horns in the thicket, Now this isn't a lamb, this is a ram. Now that's really valuable, right? Why is a ram particularly
For
valuable?
breeding.
He makes other.
He makes other rams and
Breeding.
ewes and
Breeding, I think.
yeah, that's exactly right. The ram is really valuable. So this is a whole lot better than a lamb that may make it, may not. This is a ram that caught with his head in horns caught in a thicket. And what does Abraham do?
He offers him.
Okay, he offers the lamb. Does a ram doesn't need to be in the detail. You know, now it's sort of he takes a ram, offers it instead of his son. You know, doesn't take the knife in his hand, bind the ram, plunge the knife in. You know, doesn't need to go into detail. You know, because this is not as important as those steps leading up to his willingness to sacrifice his son. Okay. And what does Abraham call the place?
Well,
Lord will provide.
The Lord will provide. And after
That's the name of the area?
that's what he calls that area. Okay.
Is there another fancy name for it?
I am sure there is,
Oh.
with L in it,
Okay.
but I don't know what it is.
Okay.
All right. Now, so Abraham has been tested, right? And how has he come out on this test?
Oh, pretty good.
Great.
He's
Oh,
obeyed.
no.
He's obeyed God.
Yeah.
But this little story is kind of self-contained because we have no mention of Sarah. You know, we just have.
Well, men did it.
You know, we
anyway.
have no mention of Ishmael. We have this little self-contained story. Okay. Now, shifts again in 15, and what happens starting in verse 15?
Oh,
I have
oh, he called him again.
Okay,
Second time.
second time from heaven, the angel, and what ends up happening? What does the angel make? Another covenant. Okay, another covenant's
He's gonna
being
bless
made.
Now, these are like
Okay.
contracts, right?
Contracts,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And this one is this is, again, covenant grounded on obedience. Same thing as with the circumcision covenant.
Right.
You know, whether you obey or whether you don't, this is another obedience. I'm going to make you as numerous as
Multiply as the stars in the heaven.
as the stars in the heaven. Okay, and the sand on the seashore. Okay, and all these great things, and Abraham does what? Goes back to the men, and then they go back to Beersheba. Okay? All right. So we've got Abraham has proven himself to be obedience. That covenant has been restated. We, the reader, need to hear it because we need to be constantly reminded that Abraham's not the end of the story. Abraham is what?
The beginning.
The beginning of the story, because the story is going to continue.
They're starting to get ethics.
What's that?
People, the development, you can hear it in these people. Their ethics.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Let's just skip over that.
What?
So now we're coming up with all those weird names.
Yes, I think this is the time for Dale to read.
We'll just skip
Yeah, so we start reading.
With Rebecca.
Now, we've talked about that tradition that is big on names, because we've run into all these a list of names before, you know, with the descendants of, because it was the people who used the word El, maybe later, maybe priests that were real concerned with names. We've got some names though that are relatively important.
Yeah.
As you just skim the name, we're going to see some of these people again. People like Rebecca. Okay. What?
She said us and bus.
Yeah, us. You know, that became a real popular name.
What?
Yeah.
What is it?
Uz and Buzz. Yeah.
Is it one Uz?
That's what you just
Well,
said.
his name is Buzz.
No, but the
you
first one
said-
is AZ.
Hey,
Yeah, Uz. Yeah.
That's his
Uz
name.
and his brother Buzz. Uz and Buzz.
Get out of here.
They were the Uz brothers.
Uz and the other guy.
Yeah.
What was their last name? Them.
Yeah. Well, Uz and Buzz.
Them.
Yeah.
Bumble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Father Rebecca.
Yes. Okay. So we've got now. If we get as we get into 23, chapter 23.
Yeah.
You know, what do we have at the beginning of 23?
Sarah.
What happens?
again.
Sarah. Only this time, Sarah's going to do what?
127.
She's 127, and
She
yeah,
still wasn't-
boy,
she wasn't
that's a
making-
long man. That's a long time. Yeah, she still looks good. Doesn't look her age.
Get out.
You know, people see her and say, "Man, you don't look a day over 107."
The outside's good.
Yeah, that's right. You know, because she keeps on pulling her skin. You know, so she looks good. And right now she's got a ball of skin. Yeah, right here. Yeah, yeah.
Her second
So-
head.
That'll be nice. I'll look young.
Yeah, she keeps on doing that. And now this is very sad.
Yeah, then
This is very sad. What happens to Sarah?
she dies.
She dies,
Don't we
right?
all?
Dies.
Now,
Yes.
what is Sarah's death? You find funny, Sam?
It's hysterical.
127. It's time.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh,
Well, thank you.
may you
Yeah.
live only to
I'm sorry.
126.
Yeah.
If I live to be 127, I'm going to say, "Oh, forgive me, Lord."
Yeah.
That's right. You know, and Bob is going to be saying,
It's time.
yeah, that's right. Now, what is the problem when the wife of a herder, someone who herds,
Yeah.
Well, she probably did all the work.
that's not what
She
when
made the
she
camp, she could have did the cooking, she made the clothes. Now he's got to be out there wandering alone.
well, he's not going to wander alone long. I can tell you that. But what if she dies?
Yeah.
What do you do with her?
Barrier.
You bury her, right?
Yeah.
You bury her, but he's a herder. He's got sheep, right?
Oh.
And he doesn't have a plot.
He doesn't have a plot. He doesn't have any land,
Okay.
right?
Gotcha.
Because he moves
Yeah.
around.
Well, that's the way they did things then. It's not a
Yes.
question of, because they do a nice stone thing maybe.
Yeah, yeah. But-
And they visit every cycle when they.
Yeah, when they wander through
Yes.
the death cycle. Yeah, when he comes, when they come around, they don't have any land, right? And now he's got his herd in the land of the.
I don't know.
Who? Where? What land is?
Starts with an H, I can't.
Starts with an H. The Hittites.
Oh, yeah.
The Hittites. Yeah. And
he's gotta
he's in the
bury her
land.
there.
He's going to have to bury her in the land of the Hittites.
Bury your
You
dead
know,
in the
but
church.
how often does he get to the land of the Hittites? You know, the death cycle only brings him there so often.
Yeah.
You know, so he is not going to get there
No, he's
very
not
much.
gonna get to come back
You know,
and
no
put
flowers
flowers
on.
on
Yeah, not going to put
Yeah.
flowers
You
on her
think they
grave.
did that then?
But it's not even. He's going to
40
bury her in land that doesn't even belong to him.
What's the difference?
He's going to be in
Why are we-
foreign soil.
When, do you remember cowboys, when somebody died, they just put them in the ground, put a wooden cross there. That's it. Wherever they drop. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. The West was crazy.
Well, but this is the West.
Prehistoric Indians were worse. When you died in the winter, they didn't dig a grave. They threw you in the midden. You know what the midden is? The
No.
garbage on the hill.
Well, let's move away from the cheerfulness because let's move because I've got
They
you know
drop,
that would
that's it.
be like dumping me in a dumpster. You know, Debbie dropping me in a.
Always tied her to a
It-
sheep and
it
took her
happened.
home.
Yeah. Well,
Drag her home.
Yeah.
Oh, she would really stink.
She wouldn't feel nothing.
who?
Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah, he could just, yeah. Or have, have her stuffed or something, turn her into a jacket.
But when did his wife-
We drifted. We
I know.
drifted. Land of the Hittites. Foreign soil. Wants to bury his wife.
Yeah.
What does Abraham decide he wants to do as the place he will bury his wife?
Oh, he has to buy this.
He is going to buy
a place.
a
to
place.
bury her, which makes sense.
Okay, he's going to buy a place, right? Going to buy a field with a cave
Yeah.
to bury his
Mistress.
wife. No, his wife.
His wife.
His wife.
Sarah.
And Sarah, because she's got to do something with her. We can't
little
wait
thing.
forever.
She gotta be
okay,
frail.
so he needs to buy land. Now, what do we see as he's looking to buy this land?
What?
How does he end up acquiring this land?
Oh,
He ends up bartering, and see, if John were here, this would be something for John to focus on. This is evidently sort of the way they bartered, did business, and it's really kind of fascinating because the Abraham makes an offer, and the leader says, "Oh no, I can't accept that from you.
Mm-hmm.
You're such a great guy." No, and Abraham insists, I've got to buy this land. It's important. And the offer said, "No, I'm not going to sell it to you. And by the way, this land is worth 400 pieces of silver, but I'm not going to sell it to you. And Abraham does what?
Gets him the silver.
Gets him the silver. So evidently, this back and forth is a lot different than people barter now.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it's like,
The guy said his price.
it said its price, but it was couched in,
Yeah.
"Oh, but I can't sell it to you, not to you,"
A
but
difference, yeah.
yes. So
But out there, they're going to be in the desert, right? He's going to be buried. She's going to be buried in the desert.
well, she's going to be buried in a cave, right?
Oh, I didn't
Wasn't
know
that
that.
part of tradition?
Yeah, she's
What,
going to be
cave?
buried in a
Yeah,
cave.
buried in
She's
a
going to be
cave,
buried in a
yeah.
cave. But why?
I didn't
Now,
know that.
all of this is this long story
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
this dickering and all this. Why is this so significant that Abraham buys this field with a cave? Why is that such a big deal theologically?
Theologically, I'm thinking I can't express myself.
Well, Christ
Hatfield
is
and
born,
McCoy's,
or Christ
same difference. Now they're going to own part of that land.
Oh, give Sandy a round of applause! Way! I think that is exactly right.
Yeah.
Remember, right at the beginning, Bob, give her a round of applause.
I did.
Oh, yo,
Oh,
good.
he did, yeah.
I give her the clap.
Oh, give her the.
Again.
Still.
Oh, still.
Did I say something wrong?
I can't. Yeah, you said something wrong.
No, I.
Okay. That's an old bowling term.
You've lost it, man.
Okay.
I
all right.
have.
No.
I really have lost it.
Yeah, no, you have it.
No, but Sandy is
That's a good thing John's
Sandy is right.
Sandy brought up sex and issue.
That now, remember, God promised right at the beginning of the Abraham story, when he was still Abram, that this was going to lead him to land that was going to be his land, right?
Yeah.
All this land was going to be his. Now, we've been focused on people a lot because of Isaac and but initially the promise was land.
Land.
This was going to be your land. By him buying that field in a cave, what is started?
He's got his foot in the door.
He's got his foot in the door. The promise is starting to be fulfilled. If right now only one field and one cave where his dead wife is buried, he's starting to acquire the land. So the promise that God made is starting to be fulfilled.
And she's sort of like the mother that he promised her to be.
Yes, that's right. And we're going to see that becomes really important because this cave is going to be the place where the descendants are going to be buried.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Is
so
that
we've
cake
got
still around? Do they know where it is? No. I just,
Yeah, don't know. All right, so we haven't, Abraham is still alive, right? He is really
old.
old. So we're going to expect him to
Kick
Kid.
off pretty soon.
kick the bucket
Yeah.
pretty soon. Next week, we're going to look at, beginning at chapter 24, and we're going to go through 25. And we're going to focus not so much on Abraham, because he's checking out. But we're going to focus on his son and his son's
Right.
wife. And his son's wife's going to be Rebecca. Rebecca.
Sunnybrook Farm.
Okay. Of
Also barren.
Yes, and yes, because throw a dart at women in the Bible and you're going to hit a barren one. That's just the way it is.
So I don't, this
You know.
shrine thing, is that cave going to be like a shrine then?
Well, that's why it's going to be so important that they don't really know location. Because one of the things the Jews are going to be real careful about is worshiping idols.
Oh, yeah. we're
And
not-
shrines
we're
are,
not to do that.
can become idols.
And if people knew where it was that were not positive about it, go and destroy it.
Well, and same thing's going to happen with Moses later. You know, he's going to die without entering the land, but nobody's going to know where. You know, nobody's going to
Let
know
me
where.
ask a question, it had nothing to do with this, but it's like loyalty or not necessarily loyalty, I mean,
Camaraderie?
well, let me ask you a question and it might come to you. I listened to the news today and this has nothing to do with politics, what I'm thinking of, but it was about politics. About, what was the name of the guy that's had been the director of FBI that they were bringing up?
Comey.
The older one?
The younger guy.
The one under him.
Yeah, and
Who?
then he became,
Oh.
I don't know, I don't
The
remember.
one that's in a bunch
They
of trouble.
switched so many so quickly.
Yeah, they did.
well, anyhow,
Well,
they were talking today, they might bring him up on
Charges.
charges.
Yeah.
And I heard a discussion amongst, the talking heads and that, and they said, well, yeah, because we should hold members of the FBI to a higher standard than everybody else.
Mhm.
That bothers me.
Me too.
Why?
Should all
Because
be
they're-
held at the
we're all
same
Yeah.
supposed to
high
be the same.
standard.
It's-
We should all
it's
be
never-
equal.
Cops are always held to a higher standard.
What?
Cops are held to a higher
Or
standard.
not now, they're not.
No.
No, I mean, in the court of law, they are. If a cop shoots someone, they're held to a higher standard than
Well, they shouldn't.
than if a civilian kills someone.
But they shouldn't be.
But that's just the way it is,
Well,
because,
it might be the way it is, but I'm not saying what,
Mhm.
what the way things are. I'm saying if everybody is at a high standard, if I can't be making a judgment about your standard.
Right.
I should I should have,
Make your own.
my standard should be as high as they could possibly be.
Correct.
All of ours should try to excel to the highest degree we possibly can. Not say, well, really, he should get away with it because
He's higher than me.
he's a little bit different than
Yeah,
us.
he's
Yeah.
bigger
no,
than
no,
me.
that's not the point. He's held to a higher standard, meaning since he did something wrong, his training and his background, he knew that he was doing something wrong. So.
Yeah, I understand that part of it, but then the person shouldn't say that they are at a higher standard than we are. That's why.
Oh, I agree with that.
So their penalty is enhanced. It doesn't mean their chair is higher or they're held in higher esteem,
But
but
people
their
do.
penalty is enhanced.
But that shouldn't be either.
Sure it should be, because
No.
with their training,
I'm just as good
It
as he
doesn't matter
is.
what your training is,
Yeah.
if you're at the high standard, that's it. If you
Yeah.
have a standard, that's what it is. And you don't then, somebody that, if they'll commit something and I commit something, they can't say, well, Hugh's got a master's degree and almost a doctorate degree, therefore he shouldn't
Be punished.
be punished like him.
Mhm. Because he's
You're
better than
saying
us,
that I'm
'cause he's
better
higher
than
than
he is
us.
because of my degree or
You're
some
higher than
higher
us.
standard. Should be the same standard.
Right.
I think this.
You're penalized more.
I'm gonna say a word of prayer and then, because I think this is a good discussion,
Yeah.
but I'm concerned the Nigerians.
They've already heard it.
Yeah,
Let's
they
pray.
probably-
Yeah.
they-
Talk about
they
this
don't care about
Nigerian
us.
thing all-
Let's have a word of
It's on the
prayer.
table.
Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time together, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to look at what obedience is all about, and a great example of obedience. Guide and direct us so that we might also be obedient to you. In the name of Christ we pray, amen.
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 You know, I got.